Welcome to New People, New Ways, a podcast brought to you by Fresh Expressions Florida and Fresh Expressions United Methodist, where we explore new ways of being church through the stories and insights of scholars and practitioners alike. I'm Isaiah Park, your co-host, Director of Church Planting, Innovation, and Diversity at Path One New Church Starts at Discipleship Ministries, and a cultivator of Fresh Expressions in Reston, Virginia.
And I'm Michael Adam Beck. I'm the director of Fresh Expressions UM and Fresh Expressions Florida. And today we are honored to welcome Travis and Allyson Smith, a power couple of the kingdom if there ever was one. I'm wondering, why are we just now doing this interview? Like, this should have been a long time ago interview. But I'm glad we found
honored to be here.
Yes.
Yeah. So let me tell you a little bit about these two amazing people. Travis is a United Methodist pastor, nonprofit executive director, and a grief counselor with 25 years of service across Western North Carolina and Charlotte. Western North Carolina Conference in the house. He holds a bachelor's in religious studies and an MDiv in pastoral counseling from Gardner-Webb University. And recently, he earned his Doctor of Ministry from United Theological Seminary, United in the house. His dissertation focused on the epidemic of loneliness and the restorative role of Fresh Expressions of Church. In 2014, Travis and Allison founded Blue Ridge Hope, a nonprofit providing mental health services regardless of a client's ability to pay. And as executive director, he's dedicated to removing barriers to quality care. Additionally, for 12 years, he's led Sacred Ale, I think probably one of the oldest Fresh Expressions in the United States, right in there with Tattoo Parlor Church and some of those that have been around for a while. It's a Fresh Expression that gathers, fostering open dialogue of faith, doubt, life, and theology. And through both his clinical and pastoral work, Travis remains committed to fostering community, healing an increasingly isolated world. Allison's heart for ministry lives at the intersection of compassionate care and creative community building. And she is currently an MDiv student at Perkins School of Theology in the Fresh Expressions concentration. Little shout out to Perkins in the house. And she's deeply engaged in exploring how the church can extend beyond its walls, a passion she brings directly to her work with Fresh Expressions United Methodist, where she serves as my right-hand woman who makes all the beautiful things that happen with Fresh Expressions United Methodist. That's all Allison doing that. Mm-hmm. Rooted in a background of human services with a bachelor from Gardner-Webb University and more than a decade and a half of administrative leadership in clinical healthcare, Allison blends operational excellence with a pastoral heart. And when she isn't studying or serving, you can find her reading, traveling, making memories with her family. And Allison and Travis, we are so glad to have you with us. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Woo! Yes. Welcome, friends. We'd love to take this time to get to know you, your stories, who you are. So who is Travis and who is Allison? Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you became who you are today.
Yeah, you want me to start?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, I'm Travis Smith. I began this journey much like many of us. I was raised in a faith community, grounded in a faith community from the time I was born, even till now. In a different denomination, though. Most of my experience up until my adulthood was in the Baptist church. That's where I was raised, and that's where I was also educated at a Baptist college. Gardner-Webb University, right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, is a Baptist university, Cooperative Baptist Fellowship connected, and also some connected with the Southern Baptist Convention. So that's where I received my education, and then my Master of Divinity was there as well. And I pastored when I first felt my call to ministry. I was 16 years old, and I didn't come from a long line of pastors. Like that wasn't a thing in my family. There's a whole nother side story to that someone spoke some prophecy to my mother when I was real young that I would be a pastor. I knew nothing about that until I answered the call. I can get into that. That's a really cool story. But the real core of that is I felt my call at 16 years old, and all I knew is that I was called to bring the gospel to a hurting world. That's the message God kept giving to me inside my heart and mind, that I kept feeling God's call. So I began that call in the tradition I knew, which is the Baptist church, and pastored, once I went through my education, pastored Baptist churches. And then eventually theologically, I just realized I didn't necessarily fit the best there, that there were just some things that I found out that my United Methodist brethren and sisters were had in their wheelhouse that I felt more affinity with. So I really felt God calling me to move toward the United Methodist Church, which I did in 2018 and haven't looked back. So here I am. That's a quick version of my calling. I was raised on a farm in South Carolina. My father at that time was a peach farmer. So I grew up farming peach trees in the summer and cattle. And that just really influenced a lot of how I see the world, because I was looking at God's creation all the time and seeing it bring forth life and see it go dormant and then come again and bring forth life. And that really influenced a lot of my own personal theology, just by seeing how God took care of creation and how I believe we as human beings need to be taking care of each other as well. But I'll stop there and let Allison jump in.
So I'm a born and raised North Carolina girl. I was actually born into a Methodist family and church and baptized Methodist. My parents divorced when I was 5, so left the Methodist church just because that's what happens. Went to a Presbyterian church for a little while, and then my stepdad's background is Baptist, so we ended up in the Baptist church, and that's where most of my education and spirituality was developed there. And then I married into the Church of God for about 10 years. So that was a completely different experience. And then when I divorced, came back to Methodism, met Travis, and here we are. I've often said I'm a spiritual mutt, but I had a professor tell me I'm a walking ecumenical movement, and I like that much better.
Amen.
And I've been doing ministry together since we got married, and it's a lot of people don't realize when we married, he actually was not pastoring churches. He was doing some interim things here and there, but I think we knew we had a calling together. I also did not realize the calling really that I had on my life. I think I've always been very involved in church, knew that there was, a piece of me that's where I wanted to be and where I wanted to serve. But spending most of my upbringing as Baptist, women aren't necessarily called to the ministry unless you're a missionary. And that was something I considered at one time. So it really wasn't until the last several years that I really felt that true calling and the intense desire to just learn more, particularly from a theological perspective. So I'm going into my second year at Perkins, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. And that's doing Blue Ridge Hope together for the last,
2014.
2014. We're still married.
We have learned to work together like day by day and still be in the same bed at night.
So it's been rewarding. It's been challenging. But one of the things that I've also learned more about my personal gifts with administration and just systems and that has been rewarding for me to kind of know where my gifts lie that have helped make a lot of this possible.
Absolutely.
I love all that. I have follow-up questions for this question. So Travis, first, having lived in the Baptist world for a time and then come over to Methodism, what are the key distinctions? What do you love about both traditions, and what do you maybe not love so much?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's beauty in both traditions for sure.
We talked about that this morning, actually.
Yeah, we did have this conversation. Let me start with what I love about the United Methodist Church that I think is maybe not necessarily completely unique to us, but in some ways parts of it is that we have the ability as United Methodists to be so deeply connected. Like we have this system that when it's lived out in a healthy way is so integral to each other. Like, you don't have to feel like you're alone. You don't have to feel like you're handling everything by yourself. You've got a support system. You have guidance. You have some oversight. That's not always true in a congregational system of church government, which a Baptist tradition is. And that can oftentimes make you feel alone. It can oftentimes make you feel like you don't have people that you can go to. I mean, the particular Baptist world that I was in, there were some attempts at that. There were local associations of Baptist churches, but all of those are really loosely connected. You still have autonomy of the local church, and there's just so much that is really still rest on your shoulders as the leader of that church, or pastor, or co-pastor, whatever your role is. That in United Methodist Church, we don't have to fill that completely all by ourselves. When there is that system that's working at the most healthy level, I think, this is my personal opinion, if our United Methodist system worked the way it was intended to, and the way it was set up originally to, I think we would be unstoppable. I think that we are probably the most supported, connected denomination in terms of what we have available to us when we operate on such a healthy way. Now, one of the beautiful things about the congregational system is things moved a little faster. You could get things done sometimes a little quicker, and there wasn't some of the hierarchical concerns that there are within other systems. So that's just one quick beauty and difference between both, and it's both a double-edged sword on both as well. The congregational system's nimble. It's very much different in the way you can make changes and move. And then the other side is you feel often isolated. And then the opposite is with our connectional system in United Methodist, we have such great connections and systems, but sometimes the systems, when they're not functioning in a healthy way, can feel very stifling.
Amen. Amen. Allison, I'll leave that alone today. Oh, I thought that was beautifully articulated. Allison, being a walking ecumenical movement, as you described it, what are the parts of those traditions you participated in that you want to bring forward into your work, that you bring forward every day? And what are maybe some that you would say, leave those parts behind if I could?
Sure. I think from the Baptist perspective, there's so many things about just the relationships that I had with the people of that community. There was always really the best of intentions for everything, but some of the things I definitely would leave behind is because so much of my upbringing was cultivated in the Southern Baptist Convention. Is just some of the dogma and the way I took evangelism with you guys this summer, and just the need to reframe evangelism and what that is. I think, like I said, it was the best of intentions, but it wasn't the best way. And I think from, being a part of a Pentecostal church and the Church of God, I think it's the emotional connection, is real. There's a lot of show, but having that connection that isn't all, orderly necessarily is not a bad thing. And being able to flow with the Holy Spirit is beautiful when it's authentic. And I was able to be a part of that. And I do believe that the parts that I, was in for the 10 years, there were certainly pieces of it that were authentic. And just that connection to the Holy Spirit is really, it's a gift, and it's a gift that is focused on in that tradition. And I do very much appreciate that.
Beautiful. I have one more follow-up question. Isaiah, I want you to weigh in on this too, because all of us on this call are represented as couples that do ministry and life together. So clergy couples, and y'all are doing all of your work, Blue Ridge Hope. And I know Isaiah and Daniel, y'all do that. Jill and I do that. And I feel like I have a pretty strong biblical historical argument for this, that I think maybe the ideal form of ministry is like husband and wife teams. I think back to the scriptures, obviously in Genesis, where the two are going to become one flesh. I have a suspicion that there's a lot of recent scholarship around Mary Magdalene, whose name literally means the tower. Magdalene, Mary the tower, Peter the rock, and that she was probably historically underplayed biblically. And then you had the smear campaign by Pope Innocent or whoever it was that conflated her with the prostitute in the New Testament, which she wasn't. And then just female apostles and teams you see in multiple places in Acts where there's husband and wife teams doing. So I think for us, like for Jill and I suck without Jill. No one would want me to be their pastor without the two of us. Like there were times when people had to put up with that and it just wasn't good, but the two of us come together. I also wonder if like a husband and wife teams mitigate a lot of the harms that we see that happen in ministry sometimes. Obviously, I'm not saying every clergy should be a couple or whatever, but it is an interesting way. I know the Salvation Army is really big into this, but for each of you, what are some of the greatest challenges, opportunities, and ways that works for you as husband and wife teams doing ministry together? If you're comfortable talking about that.
Sure, I am. Isaiah, do you want to go first? Or do you want one of us to go first?
Y'all can go first. I'm gonna think about that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. I think. What was that question one more time? What are the value in that? What are some of the values?
Yeah. What are some of the great opportunities, values, and some of the challenges?
Yeah. So the values for me, and I'll let Allison speak obviously for herself, but the values for me really is that she complements the areas that I am not good in. She is such the counterpart to the places that if you just left me in charge, I mean, the kids would be running wild. So it's helpful because I love to be 10,000 foot, look at so many things in different ways. She really helps me get down to the nuts and bolts of what needs to get done. She helps me put order and plans to things that would just be really cool ideas that float around. Mm-hmm. And she's the one that, for example, you mentioned Sacred Ale that we do, the Fresh Expression we've been doing for 12 years. And I guess it's be 13 years this year, or is it? Yeah. Yeah. So it would happen every month. It would happen, but everybody would find out about it about an hour before, like where we're going to be that week and, all those type things. And Allison puts the real organization to that and says, oh no, hey, it's coming up. We need to get the announcement out to everybody, let them know, send the text messages out. And that's just one small example. I think what she also offers me is just such a different perspective. She brings in a whole different way of viewing things that is so helpful for me, that just gives me more of a 360 view than if I was looking at it just from my angle and my linear perspective.
That's the Enneagram 9 in me.
That's true. So in the Enneagram, we can get into that, but we're different numbers, obviously. So that's also very helpful. But I don't know. What do you think?
I completely agree. Our gifts are so different, and we definitely balance each other. I'm also the one that will jump in with both feet, where he's going to analyze a little more. I'm like, let's go, let's do that. That's a great idea. And he's like, even though I'm like the planner and the details and, I'm ready to go. And that's not always a good thing. He needs sometimes a little more of a push. And sometimes that is a good thing, but that's probably one of the challenges, I would say, is just, we do have to balance each other in that way.
I can theorize for a long time.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You're ready to get moving. Yeah.
Another, also, it's both a challenge and a gift, is we are both dreamers. Mm-hmm. And we dream big when we do.
We believe anything's possible.
Amen.
Anything's possible.
But then also sometimes we sit in the dream and nothing always comes from it. Or the dream gets so big that like reining it in sometimes is, looking at it in a different way. So it's both a gift and a challenge for us both.
I would say another challenge is just that when you both are in something together and so much of your life is intertangled into the getting ministry done, getting professional work done through the nonprofit that we run. We literally live and breathe the same water all the time. And if there's a problem I'm stressed about, she can't help but feel that, and vice versa. If there's a problem she's stressed about, and the beauty in that, and again, it's a gift and a challenge in that we can carry that with each other. We kind of know each other's worlds, and we both carry it together, which is helpful. The downside of that is that there's sometimes no break from that. You're constantly in it together.
But the good news is, typically, when I'm not maybe in the best place of carrying the weight, he's good and he's got it and he's got me, and the other way around.
God has been gracious in that way, that often in those stressful seasons and stressful moments, one of us, and it ebbs and flows, it could be one or the other, is usually the one that can kind of step in there. God's been gracious in that way.
Yes.
I learned years ago that weddings were held outside the church building, and that the couples would face the community, the world, and that was the practice of the church. That because it was it was really understanding that marriages were not just about being inside the church, and that it's just the couple and how we love each other and serve each other. And, it wasn't just this. It was the whole point of marriage was to face the world and say, your marriage is about how we're sent out together to be a force, and to serve our community. And that's the whole point of marriage. And I think about my marriage and how that's been kind of at the forefront of the way we have done life together, have done even our family life together with our kids. And we've continued to ask, what does it mean to be a family that's facing the community and facing the world? And we have 4 kids, and it's been this roller coaster of trying to figure out what all of that means. And it's so messy and chaotic and so beautiful at the same time. But yeah, I've always held in my heart an understanding that husband and wife, our marriage is really a representation of Christ and the church. And how do we live that out? It's been challenging. It's been very challenging. We're very different. And at the same time, we wildly and deeply love each other. Marriage is, I think, one of the most challenging, greatest challenge in trying to figure this out. And yet there's so much beauty in it. So every day we're learning what that means, how to do it, how to figure that out. And yet I think it's one of the most, you use that word, I think, Allison, that word rewarding. And so we're still figuring it out. We've been serving together since day one of our marriage, you all. And the word that comes to my mind is just how is this marriage really showing what it means when Scripture says that Christ and the church, that's the one. And so, how do we do that? We're figuring out still.
I think I hear a book in the work that all 3 of us, meaning also our spouses, there can be a 6-person book written here.
I love it. There's so much good stuff that came out of that. So y'all have really dedicated your lives to creating spaces for healing through the church. You're very focused on that, just in generally how you go about ministry through your mental health care, like literally dreaming up this big dream that's Blue Ridge Hope, and then implementing that together and turning that dream into reality. And I feel like sometimes it's that big thing you got to rein in sometimes, because it's got maybe bigger than y'all first had planned, maybe a little bit, but
way bigger.
Yeah. And then the fresh expressions, the way you go about that, you're really tender with how you think about loneliness and isolation and healing in those spaces, and how community itself heals, which we're going to get to later. But what first convinced you that belonging and healing are inseparable, that those things are deeply intertwined?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to my childhood and my early experiences in churches all the way up through some young adulthood. There had been this idea that in church, you had to believe a certain way, you ascribe to a certain set of principles, you particularly really heavy in the Baptist tradition, you had a conversion, you come to Jesus Christ. And then once you did those things, you could become connected to this community. So you believed and then you belonged. And for me, the more I've experienced in ministry and in work, I think you have to belong before any healing takes place. Belonging has to start. And then once you feel like you belong, then you feel safe enough to explore healing, whether it be spiritually, whether it be coming to a better understanding of Jesus, or an understanding of how radically Jesus can guide and change our lives, or whether that be some healing that needs to happen psychologically with our mental health. All of that cannot happen isolated from feeling connected and like you belong first. So I am convinced that has to happen before any of the other things could ever take place. And so often we try to deal with all the other things. I mean, I'll just use the microcosm of mental health care. It's if we're not careful, we can think that someone comes to a clinic, they come to an outpatient therapy office, they're going to receive therapy, then they're going to somehow address the mental health concerns that are part of their life. Well, if you don't create an environment in that practice where they feel like they connect and they're welcome and they belong there, if that doesn't happen first, then the work can't happen in the session. So I don't care if it's church, I don't care if it's the nonprofit, someone has to feel welcomed and connected and like they belong there before you can even get to the rest of what has to happen. If we looked at an emotional hierarchy of needs, belonging would be the first. Like that has to happen before we can get to the other things. Obviously, we can feed someone, we can clothe them, and those things are important too. But even with that, I think there has to be a culture of belonging put into it and dignity for the person built into it, because the greater healing can't happen without it.
Travis, you talk so beautifully about belonging, and I just wanted to mention how, we've been friends, and I've always felt when I'm around you the sense of belonging. So, I just wanted to add that the ministry that you're doing and how you're doing ministry really is an extension of who you are. And so you're not just doing this in ministry, but that's just who you are. And I sense it. And whenever we're in conversation or just in a larger group, I always feel like when I'm with Travis, I really feel like there's a sense of togetherness and witness. Michael Beck talks about that word witness so much. And I sense that with you. So I just wanted to say, just kind of point that out, that it really is an extension of who you are. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I love how Blue Ridge Hope was founded on the conviction that quality mental health
Right.
care should be available regardless of a person's ability to pay. Love it. Absolutely love it.
We think Jesus would have been good with that too.
Yeah. And how has that ministry shaped the way y'all understand the gospel, passion, and the church's role in community?
Well, I have so many thoughts there, but I don't want to hog the time. Do you have any you want to start with?
Yeah. So, for us, and Blue Ridge Hope started so small, and it also looks nothing like what we thought it would look like, when in the beginning.
We're sitting in one of the locations. We have 3 locations now, and we're sitting right now in one of them. Yeah.
So one of the things that, in the beginning, so it started out primarily with grief and loss. And that's Travis's background, being a chaplain. And we wanted people to know that, like, you don't have to go through this alone. You don't have to walk through these trials by yourself. There's someone here for you. And that's what Jesus did. And also we truly felt that mental health was a social justice issue, because you have people who are sitting in prisons, and if they could have some mental health care, like, they could heal and be a different person. Having access to care, whether they have insurance or don't, or they have insurance, but they have a ridiculous, deductible that they have to meet before their insurance is going to kick in. We just really felt that everyone deserves that. Everyone deserves the care and the love and, a chance to heal.
Yeah. And when I think about the ministry of Jesus, like, I never hear an account of Jesus stopping somewhere to make a healing happen and then go through their income list and to see, are they registered to vote? Are they connected to this organization? What's
Can I get your copay?
Yeah, can I get your copay? What is it? Do you meet all the criteria first, and then I'm going to offer you a healing service? So for us, it was really, it's a calling of Christ. If we have the ability to bring something that the world needs and then not to bring it, that's sinful. It's sinful to have something that you can extend to your neighbor and choose not to do it. Feels so wrong. So I get that straight from the work of Jesus. What we do with Blue Ridge Hope is built on the core that all human beings are worthy of the love of God, are already loved by God, already beloved of God. They're God's children. And it is, if we have these resources, which we had the backgrounds to build this organization, to not do it is then withholding from our brother or sister the healing work of Christ. We do not see the work that is done in therapy sessions outside of the healing work of Jesus. Like, it is all connected. Now, that doesn't mean that the clients that come through here have a faith-based system. Our counselors aren't required. That is not what that means. What we mean is that it's an extension of the healing work of Jesus done through us as human beings. Whether we're raising money to provide it or whether it's the counselor providing the service, it is the extension of the healing work of Christ. And to withhold that from someone is, to me, sinful. And in this situation, we were able to build that. We had the ability to build something, make it possible, and Jesus used us to do it.
Yeah, I mean, that is just a really radical idea, honestly, in the world of mental health care. Just with my working together, partnering with our local rehab, partnering with a mental health counselor that we have as part of Open Arms Village, and just seeing how many people can actually access the care that they need. I'd say a good population of our folks that are part of our dinner church and that stay in for our community Bible study, who are experiencing homelessness, have some comorbidity of different kind of substance abuse and different kind of mental health challenges. And there is so little care. And I'm just amazed at how y'all made that commitment to radically care for people and to make secondary their ability to pay or whatever, to have the right insurance, and how God has just blessed and made a way and created infrastructure around that so that y'all could, keep providing those services. So y'all are my heroes for that. And I wish we had people like this.
It's not as easy as it might sound, but it is a calling. they call it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, it's something that often I don't. I know this podcast isn't about mental health, but it is very important to us. What so many people don't realize, and if anyone listens to this and they get something out of this part, what I'm about to say, it would be worth our time. Be aware that just because you have a healthcare deductible, it's not the same as a mental health care deductible. So you may be able to go to your doctor for $30 a visit and that work, but then you go to get counseling. If you've not looked at your insurance, sometimes there can be a completely different mental health deductible than there is for your physical health. And many people do not realize that. They come to us and like, oh, I have insurance. You do, but your mental health care deductible is $5,000, which means you have to pay that before you're ever going to be able to do the copay thing. And people, most people in our context do not have $5,000 to put forward for their mental health care. So just, again, you know, if there's listeners, kind of check into those differences, because even though you have insurance, you may be underinsured. And there may be nothing you can do about that. And that is what it is.
And your copay is double than what you pay your doctor.
Yeah, it can be different, which we could get in a whole other conversation about the sinful structures of the way our healthcare systems work and or lack thereof. But that's one people could be aware of.
Yeah. Y'all started a little Jesus revolution in the midst of these systems that are not actually focused on caring for people per se. To go deeper with this, Travis, your doctoral work really focused on the epidemic of loneliness and isolation. And Allison, your passion is helping extend the church, right? Not just being content with gathering in our little stained glass museums and doing our program, but you want to see the gospel take root in community outside of that context and within it. You all both actually are serving in heritage churches. You know, I'm preaching on Sundays, doing the normal church stuff. But what do you think the church still misunderstands about loneliness? And what have you discovered that's actually helps people experience genuine community?
Yeah. So I think one thing the inherited church misunderstands about loneliness is that gathering together is not equal to connection. We can be very lonely in the same space. And I think the traditional church may often feel like, well, we have worship, we have Sunday school, maybe we even have a Bible study. That's dealing with connection, but those things are not they're not always connected. So research clearly shows that people who attend a traditional church service once a week can be just as lonely as the general population. That's not taking away that loneliness. So what really happens with connection is when individuals feel like they're in an authentic relationship with one another. So it's creating places, it's creating systems, it's creating environments where people aren't projects, but they participate with each other. So one thing that alleviates loneliness is when I'm in a relationship with you and I'm just not giving everything, but you're also giving something to me. And I'm giving something to you, that it's literally, it's directional in that way. And I think so much of the way we have our inherited church system set up is very didactic. We stand up, everyone sits facing one direction, and we give the sermon, we sing the songs, we don't look at each other. Maybe we have a welcome and greeting for like 5 seconds, whatever, then we move on. Well, that's very much one directional. And that's not how you alleviate loneliness. We have to begin to look for ways in which the church really creates a community that's symbiotic. And what I mean by that is where we are both teacher and student. And every person that comes into that building, I don't care if they're experiencing homelessness, they're experiencing food insecurity, they're experiencing concerns with mental health care, they're still a teacher to us. And we need to really create that symbiotic connection with not just those we're serving, but those who are actually serving us too. And really begin to look at people as whole people and not just folks there to learn or listen. I don't know if that articulates that in the right way, but hopefully that communicates.
Yeah, it does.
I'm processing all of that right now because wow. Because
Mhm.
that's not what, oftentimes that's not the experience of the inherited church.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
It's,
Mhm.
and yet we want the results to
Sure.
look like genuine connection and community. And, we want the results, but then we're doing it,
Mhm.
so opposite of what we're really, looking for. It's almost as if like, in seminary, we get trained to do it that way where we're just gathering.
Right.
And then we celebrate the gathering,
Mhm.
not the genuine community that's being built. And so as you were talking initially, I was like, people are looking for the how. Like, how do we create those communities of authentic friendships? And I'm just reminded of how, like, when I'm with folks and I'm listening, I very often practice active listening. And one of the things that people will always say is, I feel like you really care when I talk.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I do. I do. And I use eye contact, and then I'll say what I hear them saying back. And, and there's that genuine care for what people are saying. And I think that's how community is formed, is genuine care.
Absolutely.
But I don't think that we're trained in that. Like, we're not trained to really have that heart and how to be in community. And I think a lot of us have lost that during COVID. We use that word, social distancing.
Mm.
It wasn't social distancing. We were physically, apart, but socially we needed to connect more.
Right.
But so much of that, like, we got to rebuild those muscles and learn how to really create those genuine connections. But yeah, I'm just sitting here right now, like, listening to what you're saying, and I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
And then it's how.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of the how is we need to be looking for the small ways to do that instead of the big ways that we think make splashes.
Yeah.
One of the things that we're guilty of in the inherited church is that we think everything's a numbers game. If we're not careful, we think just because we didn't have this many people show up, just because we weren't this many in worship, we all sitting here and those listening know that we report statistically, right? Like, if we could stop maybe considering that to be everything that it's about, and maybe the small wins are the fact that we got 5 together in the coffee shop this week. And we really had 5 people that intentionally poured into each other.
Yes.
And again, I want to really push on that. There should be no expert in the room when it comes to relationships. We should be having a relationship literally is the giving and taking both. It has to be 2 ways. So when we create environments where we just have the wise one doing the talking and everyone listens, to me, that's not helpful for building authentic community. So looking for those small ways that we can do that, those small splashes, are meaningful, and they may not necessarily show up on the statistical report, which I have a problem with, but it's really meaningful work, and that sometimes may happen with 4 and not 400.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that we've been able to really cultivate with Sacred Ale. One of my favorite quotes, I believe it's Sue Monk Kid. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
It is.
There's not a pain in the world that does not desire a benevolent witness. And that's what we do for each other at Sacred Ale.
Yeah.
We're able to sit with each other in the hurt and the pain, but we're also able to sit with each other and ask questions that, they would not be able to ask in an inherited church, because there's no space for that in a sermon. But also that, we've been taught you can't ask some of those questions too. And that space allows for authentic connection. The people that come to Sacred Ale are not like friends of ours from before. Like, these are people that we didn't know in community, and we wouldn't know them otherwise. They're very different from us. They don't, and most of them do not attend,
But also the same.
yeah. And we often will call ourselves misfits. We just don't feel like we fit in anywhere sometimes.
Mm.
And but at Sacred Ale we do.
I think it's creating those environments, though. You have to be willing to be vulnerable. So that's the first thing I would say to someone. If you want to create a community of belonging, and you want to create a culture, whether it be in a small group, a fresh expression, whatever it is, the leader has to be willing to be vulnerable. You have to have some sense of vulnerability yourself with that group and trust them, because then that allows them to feel like they can be vulnerable. One of the things I think one of the best compliments we've gotten about, you were mentioning Sacred Ale, was that a few years ago, it's maybe even been like 2 years ago, someone had tagged us in a post on Facebook, which kind of surprised me. I went back and read it, and they were like, "Thank you so much for creating a place where us invisibles could be." Like, they felt so invisible,
Wow.
but they felt like this place created a community where they were seen. That's not easy work, and it's not done overnight. Again, that goes back to what I said. It's not going to be a big splash. It's the small little acts of kindness and community building that happen along the way that create that kind of environment.
So I love everything that you're sharing. And so that leads us to this question of Sacred Ale has been gathering people for more than a decade to have honest conversations about faith, doubt, life, questions about God and theology. And so what have you learned about creating the kind of environment where people feel safe enough to ask the difficult questions and still feel like belonging? I mean, it's everything that y'all are sharing right now, but what have you learned about creating that space where people feel safe enough to share?
Yeah, you have to set ground rules that there are no bad questions, and that everyone has the right to feel and to believe as they choose, and you're not there to change that, and we're not there to correct that. So what I've learned is there's been very interesting interactions over the last 12 years that we've learned from, but mostly what I've learned is just allow people space to express what they need to express. Don't contradict, don't correct. There are other ways to come back in and say, "Now that is an amazing perspective you just had, Isaiah. Like, thank you for sharing it. I want to share just for a moment a little bit what I've experienced in this world." And that's a totally different way to maybe reframe something or not course correct something. I'm not saying that because I don't think it needs to be course corrected, but be able to say something different. So to answer that question is to always create an environment where people's thoughts, opinions, and statements are not made fun of or shamed, but allowed space for. The only time I've ever said in Sacred Ale, the only ground rule we have is that we're going to show respect for ourselves and others. That's it. You know what? If you say something that's disrespectful to another person or is dehumanizing, okay, we're going to call that out and say, that's not okay. But other than that, allow that space for people to be who they are, to express who they are. And then if I feel like something theologically or even for whatever reason from my own Christian understanding of the world, I want to emphasize, I can do that from my own experience and bring that into the room. But really create an environment where people aren't shamed. You never want to make someone feel embarrassed for sharing something from their experience. I'm not sure if that answers that question, but I feel like that's a lot of rambling to try to almost capture smoke. Like how do you capture vapor? Like it's something that happens and you can't always you have to do it. It's hard to describe.
And I think those questions that people are asking, they come from somewhere in their experience and somewhere, that it's sitting somewhere that's so sacred. And so helping them understand that when they're asking that question, it's coming from a space of deep longing or sacred space. And so I think when people are able to understand why they're asking what they're asking, it creates a space of safety. Yeah.
I would say probably 80, maybe even 90% of those that attend Sacred Ale have been hurt by the church in some way. And they understand and they believe in something, but they don't know what to do with it because all the things that they were taught and the people who taught them may have hurt them, and they don't know what to do with it. And one of the things that I have learned is perspective. To see things a different way, to consider things that I may not have considered before. As an Enneagram 9, I do tend to naturally kind of look at all sides, but even then there's another side that can, help me see things differently and learn something from someone else.
Yeah, we have been taught so much from that community. It kind of goes back to that culture of belonging in the sense of, oh my goodness, I feel like anytime we get together, we walk away with more than we brought.
And yet we're also still amazed that people still show up.
Oh yeah, I'm always shocked every time we have it. I'm like, why do people come?
I'm shocked.
One beautiful thing, and I'll just add this in there, is that over the years with Sacred Ale, we've just had so many different people come through. There was a period of time where about 2 years, there was 3 individuals who were part of the Wiccan faith that decided to join our group. And we were in community together for those 3 years. And what was absolutely beautiful was, I don't know how long it had been, maybe it was a year and a half. They finally scheduled a meeting with me and said, if we had understood Jesus the way we've talked about Jesus these last year and a half, like we've never heard of this Jesus. We've only known the mean Jesus. We've only known the Jesus who is, just very vindictive, or the Jesus who has this rigid view of the world. They're like, I could actually get on board with this Jesus. And so when I think about that, I think about how powerful it is to create a place where people can belong and have connection. They begin to see even the versions of Jesus that have been falsely built up. Some of that can fall away when we create environments where people are welcome and it's inclusive to them.
Yeah. It's so fascinating that you all are continuing a 1,600-year-old tradition of evangelism through beer. And I know Allison is really familiar with this right now because we're in a course together with Elaine Heath on one component of it was looking at Celtic Christianity and the Roman model. When St. Patrick was doing his thing in Ireland and throughout those islands, the Roman basically evangelical approach was you go in, preaching station, right? You have power and empire with you, and it's dogma, and you're teaching people the intellectual stuff, and you proclaim it from a pulpit, and it's oriented around all that. What St. Patrick's did throughout the islands, he would just connect with the chieftains, right, of the different tribes. My ancestors, these two-fisted drinking Irish and Scots who would run around butt naked on the battlefield, with weapons, paint themselves in tattoos and blue coloring. But he made beer, right? So he could make really good beer. So he would set up these little encampments, like these little micro communities, fresh expressions, and he would make beer, and he would invite people. There would be like these little families living there within the tribe, and talking about God, looking for connection points with their own theology, and not dismissing it and saying, hey, your shamanic things are all wrong and Jesus, but looking for those intersections. And the Celtic posture is the world itself is made of God, that creation is God stuff, and every living thing is made of God, that creation is the first incarnation. So to see the goodness even in those earlier kind of indigenous practices of those tribes and such. And then because one aspect of why they came is because he made good beer, right? And that they could sit and drink and connect and have these relationships. Mm-hmm. So that incarnational way, you were like continuing that really long ancient practice through Sacred Ale.
Thank you for articulating that, because you did it so well. Because this is one of the fun things that we've watched over the years is we have this joke about we early on we would notice this a lot. We would do Sacred Ale, and about 5 bar stools down there would be somebody, and they would be kind of looking over it every so often. Next week there were 4 bar stools down. The next week they were 3 bar stools down. The next week they were in the circle. Yeah. And it was just amazing to watch that progression. They came for the beer, right? Like they're coming to drink, but they saw something and went, what is this? Enough that they were there at the same time the next week at the exact same moment. And then they were just kept moving closer and closer until they were in the circle, which to me is a beautiful, beautiful picture of Christ drawing, the Holy Spirit drawing someone in.
Yeah. So I know we're out of time now. We could just talk to y'all all day because it's so good.
Have us back. We can talk more one day.
Yeah, we could actually do a second episode for sure. But so you've already started to ease into this, but like, why are fresh expressions so important for the church today? What are the big hopes that you have for the church right now?
Oh, wow. You want me to start?
Sure.
I mean, fresh expressions for me is the church. It is church. And we are creating these small pockets of the church going to the world. Long gone are the day that we can open up the door and say, everyone come. We have to go to the places where people are and connect with them. To me, not to do so is to fail to be the church. It's not a question to me about whether fresh expressions are church. No, fresh expressions are church. And it's actually being the church, going to where these people are, connecting with them in the environments that they are already familiar with, and bringing that spirit of gospel of love and peace of Jesus there. We have a long history as the church doing that. And I think we have to get back to it. I was reading something recently, and Francis Asbury one time wrote that if the American church, speaking particularly for the American Methodist Church, gets ever so wrapped up in buildings, that we will lose our identity. I think we've often lost our identity because we're so wrapped up in places that we forget that the church is actually taking place in all these other places and times and spheres. So my great hope for the future is that we as a denomination, I'm going to be honest with you for a moment. My hope for the future is that we as the denomination can begin to count those just as much as what we do is 11 a.m. because it's just as important. I'm going to say it's more important, but it's just as important. And it is church. And I love the idea, we have so many people currently wringing their hands around the future of the church. I'm going to tell you, man, the church is going nowhere. It may look different, but the church is going nowhere. So this is the church of the now. It's the church of the future. And I just hope we can get on board with capturing that so that we can celebrate it together as the United Methodist.
Wow. Powerful.
Isaiah, before you close that down, I just got to share a prayer from the Mother of Methodism, which I've been just actually trying to get down to the original source on this, and I haven't been able to. So maybe as a scholar, I shouldn't even do this, but it's been cited and quoted by a lot of people. But her prayer, Susanna Wesley, help me, Lord, to remember that religion is not to be confined to the church of the closet, nor exercised only in prayer and meditation, but that everywhere I am in thy presence. But everywhere I am in thy presence.
Yes.
Amen.
The key kind of concept of fresh expression. Sorry, Isaiah.
Love it. Where can our listeners connect with you and follow your ministry?
Oh, great question. The best way to do that would be probably through Substack. You can follow me through Substack. You can follow Allison through Substack. You can also follow us on the traditional social media channels of Instagram and Facebook. I dropped the whatever, it's not Twitter anymore, X. I don't do that. But you can find us on the other two forums. And obviously, sacredale.com will take you straight to the Facebook page. And you can see a little bit of what we're doing there. BlueRidgeHope.org is where most of the nonprofit stuff operates around the mental health sphere. But you can find us any of those 2 web addresses.
Awesome. Well, Allison and Travis, you all are amazing. Gosh, thank you so much for all that you do, for really living out what Jesus tells us to do. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with us today. And to all those listening, thank you for joining us for this episode of New People, New Ways. If you enjoyed our conversation today, please share it with a friend. To connect with us or learn more about Fresh Expressions, visit freshexpressionsfl.org or Fresh Expressions United Methodist through Discipleship Ministries. See you all next time on New People, New Ways.